Welcome back to Redacted Frequencies, the podcast where we dig into the theories they don't want you to hear about. I'm Cipher.
And I'm Echo, and today we're going down a rabbit hole that's been making rounds on social media lately, especially with all these drone sightings happening.
Right, yeah. So if you've been online at all in the past few weeks, you've probably seen people talking about Project Bluebeam again. And I know we've touched on this before, but
it's everywhere right now.
It really is. And I think, with everything that's been happening with these mysterious drones over New Jersey and other parts of the country, people are starting to connect dots that maybe shouldn't be connected, or maybe they should be. I don't know. That's what we're here to figure out.
Exactly. So for those who are new to this theory, or if you've heard the name but don't really know what it's about, Project Bluebeam is this conspiracy theory that basically claims that, how do I put this?
That the government's going to fake an alien invasion.
Yeah, but it's more elaborate than that. It's like they're supposedly going to use advanced holographic technology to stage this massive global event. Could be aliens, could be religious figures, could be both, to basically scare everyone into accepting a new world order.
Right, and this isn't some new theory either. This goes back to the 1990s with a Canadian journalist named Serge Monast. And before anyone asks, no, this has nothing to do with Project Blue Book, which was the actual Air Force program that investigated UFOs from 1947 to 1969.
Oh, good point. Yeah, people confuse those all the time. Actually, you know what? Before we dive deeper into the current stuff, I think it's worth talking more about Serge Monast himself, because his story it's pretty fascinating and kind of tragic.
Completely different things. Blue Book was, legitimate government investigation. Bluebeam is, well, we'll let you decide what Bluebeam is. But the timing is interesting, right? Because Monast was writing about this in the 90s. And now here we are in 2024 with all these drone sightings, and people are like, this is it. This is Bluebeam happening.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, he wasn't just some random conspiracy theorist. He was an investigative journalist, and he was researching what he believed were real government programs targeting religious and cultural institutions. And I have to say, when I first started looking into this again because of all the recent buzz, I was kind of surprised by how detailed Monast's original theory was. This wasn't just some vague, they're gonna fake aliens thing.
Exactly. He was based in Quebec, and he'd written extensively about what he saw was attempts to undermine traditional Canadian values and sovereignty. He was particularly focused on the role of the United Nations and international organizations in what he believed was a plan for global governance. No, not at all. He laid out this whole 4-step plan, and it's pretty wild. You want to walk through it?
And what's really eerie is the timing of his death. He died of a heart attack in 1996 at age 51, and it was just days after he finished writing about Project Bluebeam. His supporters claim he was in good health and that his death was suspicious.
Yeah, let's do it. So step 1, according to Monast, is, and this is going to sound crazy, fake archaeological discoveries. The idea being that they would plant evidence or stage discoveries that would basically undermine existing religious beliefs.
Right, and of course that just adds another layer to the whole conspiracy, doesn't it? Whether you believe his theories or not, the idea that he might have been silenced for getting too close to the truth, that becomes part of the narrative itself. Right, destabilize people's faith in their current religions to make them more susceptible to whatever comes next.
Exactly. And, reading his original writings, they weren't just wild speculation. He was citing specific NASA patents referencing actual military research into psychological warfare, documenting real technological developments. Whether his conclusions were correct or not, he was clearly doing his homework. Exactly. Then step 2 is the big one. This is where the holograms come in. According to the theory, they would use satellites and advanced projection technology to create massive holographic displays in the sky worldwide. And these wouldn't just be random images.
They'd be tailored to different regions, right?
Yeah, that's what makes it so elaborate. Like they'd show Jesus to Christians, Buddha to Buddhists, Allah to Muslims, all simultaneously, but each group would see their own religious figure. And then all these figures would supposedly merge into one being representing this new unified world religion.
Which, okay, from a technical standpoint, even putting aside whether this is real or not, the technology required for that would be insane. We're talking about projecting three-dimensional images that would be visible from multiple angles across vast distances.
In broad daylight, presumably.
Right. In broad daylight, visible to millions of people simultaneously. I mean, look, I've seen some pretty impressive holographic displays, but they're usually in controlled environments. Dark rooms, specific viewing angles, that kind of thing.
But then step 3 gets even weirder. This is where they supposedly use something called ELF waves, extremely low frequency electromagnetic waves, to directly implant thoughts into people's brains.
Telepathic mind control, basically.
Yeah, so people would not only see these holographic religious figures, but they'd also hear them speaking, except the voices would be coming from inside their heads in their own languages, perfectly synchronized with the visual displays.
And then finally, step 4 is where it all comes together. After people have been presumably convinced by this massive audio-visual spectacle that there's some new divine authority, they stage what appears to be an alien invasion or some other global threat.
Right, to create panic and make people desperate for someone to save them?
Exactly. And conveniently, there's this new unified world government ready to step in and restore order. Problem, reaction, solution. Classic.
So that's the theory in a nutshell. And you know what? When Monast wrote about this in the 90s, most people probably thought it sounded like pure science fiction. But now
we have these drone sightings and people are connecting dots.
Yeah, and it's not just random people on Twitter. Like some pretty prominent, well, let's call them alternative media figures, have been pushing this connection hard. They're saying these drones are testing the technology, or they're mapping projection capabilities, or they're just getting people used to seeing weird things in the sky.
Right. And I have to say, the timing is interesting. These drone sightings have been happening for weeks now, and officials keep saying they don't know what they are or where they're coming from, which, either they genuinely don't know.
You know what's really fascinating about this whole resurgence? It's how the theory has evolved and spread through social media. Like, Monast's original writings were pretty dense academic stuff, but now you've got TikTok videos breaking it down into digestible clips, Twitter threads connecting every news event to Bluebeam.
Which is concerning in itself.
Right. It's been completely democratized and gamified in a way. People are treating it like a puzzle to solve, finding clues in everything from patent filings to weather balloon launches to SpaceX missions. The algorithm feeds them more content, and pretty soon, they're deep in this rabbit hole.
Exactly. Or they do know, and they're not telling us, which is also concerning. And in that information vacuum, theories like Bluebeam start to fill the gap, And what's really interesting is how Bluebeam has become this central node that connects to so many other conspiracy theories. QAnon, Flat Earth, chemtrails, HARP, they all somehow tie back into this grand unified theory of control.
But let's talk about the technology aspect for a minute, because that's where a lot of experts, when they address this theory, they focus on the technical impossibility of it all.
Yeah, it's like the Marvel Cinematic Universe of conspiracy theories. Each one supports and reinforces the others. HARP provides the mind control technology. Chemtrails condition the atmosphere for projections. The flat Earth means the projections only need to work on one plane. Right, the holographic projections especially. I mean, current holographic technology just isn't capable of what Bluebeam describes. You'd need, massive amounts of energy, perfect atmospheric conditions, and technology that we're not even sure is physically possible.
Yeah. And then there's the ELF wave mind control thing. Like, ELF waves are real, they do exist, but the idea that you can use them to implant specific thoughts or voices into people's heads, that's not how brain science works. Speaking of current holographic technology, I actually looked into this pretty deep for this episode, and it's worth breaking down what actually exists versus what Bluebeam would require.
But here's the thing that I always come back to with theories like this. Just because something isn't possible with current publicly known technology doesn't mean it's impossible, period. Like, how much do we really know about what's being developed in black budget programs?
Oh, interesting. What did you find?
That's a fair point. I mean, if you'd told someone in 1950 that we'd have devices that could project realistic three-dimensional images, they probably would have said that was impossible too.
So the best aerial holographic displays we have right now are things like the hypervision or drone light shows. Impressive, but they require either physical screens, fog, or water droplets to project onto. For true mid-air holograms visible in daylight across vast distances, that's still science fiction.
Right. And even those impressive drone light shows that we see, those are just points of light, not detailed three-dimensional figures. To project a convincing holographic Jesus or Buddha that looks real from multiple angles in daylight without any projection medium.
Right, and that's where it gets tricky to dismiss something completely. Because we're working with limited information about what's actually possible. You'd need to literally manipulate light photons in midair, which would require energy levels that would probably be, dangerous to anyone nearby. And that's assuming the physics even works the way the theory suggests, which most optical physicists say it doesn't.
But let's talk about the social and psychological aspects too, because I think that's equally important. The idea that you could manipulate entire populations with a single event, that assumes a level of psychological uniformity that probably doesn't exist.
Yeah, people are skeptical. Even if you showed them the most convincing holographic Jesus or Buddha or whatever, there would be millions of people immediately calling it fake, analyzing the technology, posting about it online, which brings up an interesting psychological question. Why are people drawn to theories like Bluebeam in the first place? I mean, beyond just distrust of government, there seems to be something deeper going on.
Exactly. We live in an age where people question everything. Half the population doesn't even believe official government statements about routine stuff, let alone something as extraordinary as a religious apparition. I think there's something to be said about developing better media literacy skills in general. Like when you see a video of mysterious lights in the sky, what questions should you be asking? Where was this filmed? When? Who took the video? Has it been edited? Can other witnesses corroborate what's shown?
True, but playing devil's advocate here, maybe that's exactly why something like this could work. If people are already primed to distrust official narratives, maybe they'd be more likely to believe something that appears to be supernatural or divine. Exactly. And also, what are the incentives at play? Who benefits if people believe this particular narrative? What other explanations haven't been explored? It's not about being cynical or dismissive. It's about developing that muscle of critical analysis.
That's an interesting point, especially if it's presented as being beyond government control. Hey, even the government can't explain this divine manifestation. And I think it's crucial to seek out diverse sources and perspectives when you're only getting information from channels that confirm what you already believe. You're not getting the full picture. Look for what mainstream media is saying, but also look for independent researchers, academic papers, official government statements, international coverage.
Right. And then when the same government steps in to manage the crisis, people might be more willing to accept their authority because they seem to be dealing with something that transcends normal politics. And being comfortable with uncertainty, I think that's huge. There's this human tendency to want definitive answers, but sometimes the honest answer is we don't know yet, or the evidence is inconclusive. That's not satisfying, but it's often more accurate than jumping to elaborate explanations.
What's really interesting about the current resurgence of this theory? It's how it's being connected to current political movements. A lot of the people pushing the drones equal Bluebeam narrative are the same people who've been talking about
deep state operations and global elites trying to control the population. And maybe that's the real value in discussing theories like Project Bluebeam. Not because we necessarily believe them, but because they force us to think about these bigger questions about power, technology, manipulation, and truth. They make us more aware of how information spreads, how our biases work, and how to think more critically about everything we encounter.
And that makes sense in a way, right? Because Bluebeam fits perfectly into that worldview. It's got all the elements: secret government programs, advanced technology, psychological manipulation, global control.
It's like the ultimate conspiracy theory because it incorporates so many different elements. You've got UFOs, religion, mind control, New World Order. It's got something for everyone who's already inclined toward conspiracy thinking.
And that's actually what makes it kind of dangerous in a way, isn't it? Not because it's necessarily true, but because it can be used to justify almost any level of distrust or resistance to authority.
Right, like if you believe that the government is capable of staging a fake divine intervention to control your mind, what aren't they capable of? And at what point does healthy skepticism become paralyzing paranoia?
Yeah, that's the line that's hard to draw because, governments have done messed up things before. MK Ultra was real. Operation Mockingbird was real. So it's not like the concept of government psychological operations is completely far-fetched.
Exactly, and that's what makes these theories so persistent. They're not built on nothing. They're built on documented historical examples of actual conspiracies. And then they extrapolate from there. But, when we talk about the historical precedent for government psychological operations, we should probably dig deeper into some of the documented examples because understanding what governments have actually done helps us evaluate what they might be capable of doing.
But speaking of those drone sightings, let's talk about what's actually happening there because I think it's worth looking at the more mundane explanations too. Right, like Operation Chaos, where the CIA infiltrated anti-war groups in the 60s and 70s, or Operation Northwoods, which was a plan to stage false flag attacks to justify invading Cuba. Thank God that one was rejected, but the fact that it was even proposed.
Yeah, good point. So we've got these mysterious drones appearing over New Jersey and other areas, and officials are saying they don't know what they are. But, there are simpler explanations. Military exercises, private companies testing equipment, foreign surveillance, and more recently, we've learned about things like the Pentagon's Highlands Forum, which studies how to use information warfare and social media manipulation, or the Air Force's persona management software that allows one person to control multiple fake social media accounts simultaneously.
Or just even regular aircraft that people are misidentifying because everyone's on high alert right now.
But getting back to these drone sightings, I think it's worth looking at the specific details that people are pointing to as evidence. Because when you really examine what's been reported, there are some interesting patterns.
True. Once people start looking for mysterious things in the sky, they tend to find them, even if they're not actually mysterious. But the official response has been kind of weird, hasn't it? Like, they're simultaneously saying, we don't know what these are, and they're not a threat.
Yeah, like what? I mean, I've seen the videos, but what patterns are you seeing?
Yeah, that is a bit contradictory. How can you know something's not a threat if you don't know what it is?
Well, for one thing, the sightings seem to be concentrated over specific areas: military installations, power infrastructure, water treatment facilities. That's either surveillance or it's mapping key infrastructure for some future operation.
Right, and that kind of mixed messaging is exactly what feeds conspiracy theories. When official statements don't make sense, people start looking for alternative explanations.
And the timing is interesting too, right? They seem to appear in formations, often at dusk when they'd be most visible against the sky, but the lighting makes it hard to get clear details. Almost like they They want to be seen but not identified. And Bluebeam provides a pretty compelling alternative explanation, at least for people who are already inclined to believe in large-scale government deception.
You know what's also interesting? The international aspect of this. Because if Bluebeam were real, it would require coordination between governments worldwide. And, we can barely get countries to agree on trade deals, let alone staging a fake alien invasion together.
That's a really good point. Like, the logistics alone, you'd need NASA, the UN, military forces from multiple countries, media organizations, all keeping the same secret and working toward the same goal.
And historically, the bigger a conspiracy gets, the more likely it is to leak. Like, look at how hard it's been to keep actual military operations secret, even relatively small ones.
Right. Though I guess the counter-argument would be that the people involved might not know the full scope of what they're working on. Like, compartmentalization is a real thing in intelligence operations.
That's true. You could have scientists working on holographic technology, military personnel managing satellites, psychologists studying mass persuasion, all without knowing how their work fits into a larger plan.
Mm-hmm. And that actually makes it more plausible in some ways, doesn't it? Instead of thousands of people consciously participating in a conspiracy, you might just need a small group at the top coordinating the work of people who think they're doing legitimate research.
You know what that reminds me of? The Manhattan Project. Thousands of people worked on that, but most of them didn't know they were building an atomic bomb. They just knew they were working on some kind of important war effort.
Exactly. And that was in the 1940s. Imagine what kind of compartmentalization and information control is possible now with digital communications and artificial intelligence and all the tools that governments have at their disposal.
Although there's also the flip side of that, which is that information is much harder to contain now. With social media and citizen journalism and encrypted communications, it's a lot easier for whistleblowers to get information out there.
True. But then you get into questions about how to distinguish between legitimate whistleblowing and disinformation campaigns. Like, how do you know if someone claiming to have inside information about Bluebeam is telling the truth, or if they're part of a deliberate misinformation effort?
And that's where it gets really complicated because maybe that's the point. Maybe the goal isn't to keep Bluebeam secret, but to make people uncertain about what's real and what isn't.
Ooh, that's dark. You're talking about using the conspiracy theory itself as a form of psychological warfare.
Think about it. If people can't distinguish between real threats and imaginary ones, they become easier to manipulate. You don't need to control information if you can just flood the zone with so much conflicting information that people give up trying to figure out what's true.
Right. So whether Bluebeam is real or not becomes almost irrelevant if the conspiracy theory itself achieves the goal of undermining people's ability to think critically about what their government is doing.
Exactly. And maybe that's the most insidious aspect of all this. It's not just about whether the technology exists or whether the plan is feasible. It's about how the theory itself shapes the way people think about reality and authority.
So where does that leave us? I mean, we started this conversation talking about mysterious drones and ended up discussing the nature of truth in reality in the information age.
Which is probably exactly where we should be, honestly, because theories like Project Bluebeam aren't really just about the specific claims they're making. They're about bigger questions. How much should we trust authority? What level of technological capability do governments have? How do we distinguish between legitimate skepticism and paranoid thinking?
Right. And I think the answer isn't to dismiss these theories completely, but it's also not to accept them uncritically. It's to use them as starting points for asking better questions about the world around us.
Like, okay, maybe Project Bluebeam specifically is technologically impossible or logistically infeasible, but Are there other ways that advanced technology could be used to manipulate public opinion? Are there other forms of psychological operations that we should be concerned about?
Mm-hmm. And are there patterns in how mysterious events get reported and discussed that we should be more aware of? Like, why do some stories get attention while others don't? Who benefits when people are focused on certain types of threats?
Exactly. Those are the questions that I think are worth pursuing regardless of whether you believe in Project Bluebeam or not.
So for our listeners, I guess our takeaway would be stay curious, stay skeptical, but also stay grounded. Just because something is possible doesn't mean it's probable. And just because something seems impossible doesn't mean we shouldn't think about the underlying concerns it represents.
Well said. And keep an eye on those drones, I guess. Whether they're part of Project Bluebeam or just regular mysterious government activity, they're definitely worth paying attention to.
Definitely. All right, that's going to wrap up today's episode of Redacted Frequencies. Thanks for joining us on this journey down the Bluebeam rabbit hole. If you've got thoughts, theories, or mysterious drone sightings of your own, hit us up on our socials.
And remember, question everything, but don't forget to question the questions too. Until next time, this is Cipher
and Echo, reminding you to keep your frequencies tuned and your mind open. We'll catch you in the static between worlds. And if you're interested in diving deeper into any of the topics we covered today, we'll have links and resources in our show notes. Stay safe out there.
Oh, and before we go, next week we're diving into something that's been haunting aviation experts for a decade now. The disappearance of Flight 370.
Yeah, and specifically the satellite data they hid. We're talking about a deep dive into the bizarre inconsistencies behind Malaysia Airlines MH370. Because there's so much about that story that just doesn't add up.
Definitely one of those stories that the more you dig, the weirder it gets. And hey, if you're watching this on YouTube, do us a solid and hit that subscribe button. Maybe throw us a like if we manage to make you think about things differently.
Yeah, it really helps us keep doing this weird thing we do. And honestly, the more people who are asking these kinds of questions, the better. So until next time, keep questioning, keep digging, and we'll see you in the rabbit hole.